Hey everybody, welcome back to Landshark Garage. A little cool here in the old shop, but one of our most popular videos is the one where we kind of just toured the shop and talked about some of the tools and stuff we had, and we got a lot of input back on that, on people asking, hey, what's this, and why didn't you spend more time on this? Could you spend a little more time on this? And I'm not doing like these are my favorites. I'm just going to kind of go over some of the stuff that we talked about during that tour and go a little more in depth for folks that are looking for that. We really appreciate you following us. We love what we're doing here. We're going to get ready to start tackling that guy there, but first let's talk about some of the tools that we have a little more in depth than we did in the first video. So grinders, cutters, sanders, stuff like that. When you do a lot of metal work, you have a tendency to collect tools like that. So this stuff was all in that cabinet over there to begin with, and we talked a little bit about it. This is a 7-inch grinder. I don't use this grinder a lot. It moves a lot of metal, but it's hard on your body. That one is when you're using it, if you have to do a lot of grinding. But it's a tool shop. I'm not big into expensive electric tools or expensive tools at all. If it works, I keep it and I keep using it, and you'll see that as we talk about some of this stuff. This is a Pro Max oscillating tool. I've probably used it 2 or 3 times, and they've got metal cutters for these things. It's kind of a woodworking tool, but they've got metal cutters for these, and there's spots where that you can use that where you can use nothing else to cut. You know, I've got electric, like a body saw that's got a real fine bit on it, and I have an air hacksaw which has got a real fine bit on it, and sometimes it just can't get in there and make them cuts that you need to make on some of the metal when you're working on it. Okay, this is a air nibbler, kind of for cutting. You know, if you look at the end of it, it's got a duck bill. We used to do a lot of sheet metal work on race cars and stuff. We used this tool quite a bit. That's Tool Shop brand, you know, basic Menards brand, but it's got a lot of miles on it, and it's held up very well. 4-inch grinders. I have 3 corded ones and 1 in reserve. The 1 in reserve is there. I've got 2 Porter cables, not because they're any better, but at one time they were selling them Porter cables for like 20 bucks. Both these Porter cables are well over 5 years old. This one's always got a wire wheel on it. I don't like having to change things halfway through when you're working on something, so this one's got a wire wheel on it. This is my cutter. Yeah, I know there's no guard on it. I took it off just for the video. It's not a safety thing. I took it off so you can see what my blade looks like. How's that sound? But Porter cable, this one holds up. It just cuts and cuts and cuts. I've replaced a set of brushes in this one once. The other one with the wire wheel on it, I have not. I might swap these around one of these days, just because this one's got a lot less hours on it than this cutoff wheel does. This Drill Master, I don't know where that's from. Maybe Harbor Freight. I'm betting it wasn't more than $20, and I bought it just to have on hand, because when one of these dies, it just goes in the garbage, and I just put something else in its place and hope it holds up as well. These Porter cables, they've really been an excellent tool for cutting and grinding. This one is Performax, which is a Menards brand, I believe. This one's always got a flap disc on it. I have like some stone grinding wheels, but I very rarely use them. I like to use flap discs and like roll locks and stuff like that. We'll get into that shortly, but that one's probably 3-4 years old, maybe 5. It's hard to tell. I know this tool shop, 8-inch tool shop grinder, if I've used it 10 times, I'd be amazed. And we used that when we circle track raced, which has been a long time ago now. You know, we did that for about 7 years. So that's my corded tools. Like I said, over there, there's a right angle drill and a couple of hand drills, but most of my corded tools are for cutting and grinding or sanding. All right, I do have some cordless. This little DeWalt 4.5 inch 20 volt. It's nice. I love it. It's convenient to use. These Milwaukee's. This is a Milwaukee. It's got a roll lock disc on it for sanding and stuff. The 12 volts, so it goes through batteries pretty readily, but it's handy. I use it a lot. This little cutoff wheel, I use this a lot. I've talked about this several times when we were working on the 3+3. That's my cordless collection there. Everything else I have is air tools. All right, when we go back to the corded tools, this is my boxes, you know, flap discs, cutoff discs, all these grinding stones. I'll never use them. These little roll locks, they can go on. You got wire brushes. I try and keep them all in that electrical box over there so that they're separated from my air stuff. We'll get into the air stuff here in a second, but this is the drawer for the air stuff, and this is where I keep all my cut-off wheels for my air grinder or my air cutoff, my belt sander, cut up more cut-off wheels, 3-inch roll locks, 2-inch roll locks. I've got the gasket removing roll locks back there. These little pin wrenches I've got everywhere because nobody can seem to use the same consistent pin wrench style. So like I said, this is a 4.5 inch metal cutting wheel that Milwaukee puts out. I've used one a couple times. I have it there. They've all got their place. You know, everything here is here because I've used it and I like it. All these stones are mostly because that's what comes with different grinders. But like flap discs and stuff, I probably got another stack of 10 of them flap discs. So let's get into the air tools. Oh, first, this is a long reach electric die grinder. I use this when I'm porting and working on intakes and stuff like that with my carbides. It's handy because my old air compressor, I'd run out of air when I used it. I now have a better air compressor that holds up a little better, but that still has its place. That carbide on that is for aluminum. It served its time, that's for sure, porting intakes, and it held up pretty good. Here's the rest of my carbides. I keep these in my air drawer. A lot of them are for aluminum. Some have never been used. I've been kind of trying to collect them. Carbides are expensive when you start buying them, and you should always buy a good quality one. These two back here, these two little, you know, they've got a lot of miles on them, but they were very inexpensive ones, and they show themselves when you start to cut and grind. This is a panel flanger, air powered panel flanger, so you could punch holes for spot welding, plus you can flange a panel. This is something that I've just not had very long. It works pretty slick. I haven't used it a lot. The one I used before was ran by an air driver, this one, and if you look at how that one goes, it makes the same flange, but you just kind of do it manually. As you pull the button, that slams and puts the flange on your panel. Works pretty slick. Kind of time consuming, but it's really nice when you're trying to butt weld, or not butt weld, make a flange for welding, or you know, the biggest thing with flanges now is using structural adhesive to glue panels on instead of welding them. So that old tool still got its place, plus I can use that air hammer on my drivers and stuff that I have. This is a little sander that I just bought not too long ago. I think this is made by Astro, and this is handy. One of the guys I work with had one, and I used it one time, and I thought, boy, I really need to have one of them. This head will adjust to different angles, and now that I've got a better air compressor, I don't have to worry about running out of air when I'm sanding and stuff on that. So that's something I use quite a bit. This is an air nibbler. This is made by Central Pneumatic, which is a Harbor Freight company, and this thing's well over 15 years old. And you just kind of run it along sheet metal, and it eats a nice little 1/4 inch wide hole for cutting, kind of like this air shears here does, and it spits these little nasty pieces of metal every place. But like when we were doing aluminum and making panels and stuff for the race car, we really use this around the roll bars and stuff, like you do your bead rolls, which I have a bead roller floating around here someplace. But you do your bead rolls, and then you could go right around your roll bar, and it would dress up really nice. There's the carbides again. So angle grinders, I've got one that's set up with a 2-inch roll lock. Show you what I mean here by a roll lock. That part comes out right there. Most people know what a roll lock is, but I've got this one set up to run 2-inch. I've got this one set up to run 3-inch because I hate changing ends. So this little Chicago Pneumatic, quite a bit more expensive than this Central Pneumatic, quite a bit better angle grinder than this one. This one's about 7 years old. This one's about 20 years old. Both still hanging in there. This is a straight cutoff wheel. Evercraft, kind of the do-it-yourself line at Napa. And I use this guy a lot. Of course, I've taken the guard off so you can see how I use it. You know, I would never run something like that. This little guy is a Power Mate. I think I paid 19 bucks for this. This flap disc will be replaced, but these little flap discs like this, they come in like a 3/4 or 1/2 inch on up to like 1.5 inches, and man, they're handy for moving metal and cleaning things up. So that is that. This is a ATD mini grinder, and this has got a carbide on it too. When I'm hogging out holes or something like that, this is my go-to tool for that, so I don't have to get out the electric one. This has got a metal carbide on it. That carbide's probably 7 or 8 years old. It's made a lot of holes bigger, that's for sure, because I'm not a very accurate driller, I guess, it seems like. But so there's my grinders and metal moving apparatuses. If you have any questions, put them down below where we take questions, or message me. I get more messages than I do comments. But that's my grinders. Nothing in a top 10. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the different lights I use, and that blue toolbox that you saw in the tool review, my toolbox walkthrough, the little one that we take when we go on the road to work on stuff or go down to our storage shed to get our vehicles and stuff out. That's one we take along, and I just had in that last video, I just had it sitting on the floor. I didn't actually show you what actually is in that little toolbox. We're going to go through that, and we're going to go through some of my electrical stuff for working with 12 volt. We'll also probably take a look at some of my extractors and thread cleaning stuff, because there was some people that really wanted to see more than just what was laying in the cup there. So we're going to lay it out, take a look at it, talk about it, and maybe that'll pique your interest and you'll want to know more about something, or a lot of this, like I said, I have Snap-on, Matco, all the big name tools, and I have cheap tools. As long as the tool works, I don't really care who made it. There are some wrenches that I'm very specific that I like, and some things that I will never buy again, different brands. But if it worked, like these Porter cables, as long as they've worked for 20 bucks, if I ever catch them where they're that cheap again, I'll buy 2 or 3 of them and just keep them on hand, because when they fail, you can throw them in the garbage and not feel bad about it. When a $150 Makita tool fails, you feel a little worse. Let's talk about lights. This guy here is an under hood light that I bought. That's a ATD light. Got a couple different settings. You can actually plug it in and use it, so when it goes dead, this has been charged for a couple weeks. When it goes dead, you can still use it. It's expandable, so it'll hook underneath the hood, like right across the hood on the old Marrow here, you know, and you can hang it and you can index it. So that's handy. One of them things I'm glad I got. I don't use it a lot, but like when we start doing the interior in the Camaro, it'll probably be hanging up across the channel here, so that we have pretty good light in there, you know, to see where you drop them screws and stuff. This little DeWalt light was an add-on. You buy one wrench, you got this light for free. It's handy. It's just got a hook on the back of it. There's no magnet. It flexes, you know, so it's got its purpose. I like to take that along when when we travel, like if we go to a car show, Devil's Lake, Minneapolis, someplace that's a ways away, I usually take one of my DeWalt impacts and this light, because invariably when you break down with a hot rod and you drive your shit, you're gonna have to work on your shit when it's dark. So I try and keep that light. As we've been traveling, that's one that's followed us around. I've usually got a headlamp, you know, that in all my toolkits in our vehicles. I've got a couple in the garage here. This blue fuel has been a great light. You know, it's got a light on top, it's got a low, it's got high, it's got a magnet, it flexes, it's got a magnet on the bottom of it. You can tell this one's beat to death. I know guys that have these blue fuel lights and they just love them, but it's been my go-to light. That one's probably 6 years old, I'm betting. This is a corded LED light. I like to use this, as you can tell if you look on the screen or on the lens, I like to use this one when I'm welding. So if you're following our 3+3 project, when I was doing rockers, you probably saw this hanging on the B-pillar and, you know, shining down into the, when I was replacing floor pans and stuff like that, because it's electric and I don't have to worry about it dying. One thing about LED lights, when they die, they're dead. They don't just kind of get dim or anything like that. They die, they're dead. This one I got for Christmas. This is a Milwaukee Rover, I think they call it. A couple different settings. It's durable, it can fall down. Got magnets. It's got this little leg that pulls out of it, so you can hook it onto things like over a 2x4. Runs off the 12-volt batteries that my grinders and all my Milwaukee tools are 12-volt. I don't have any 18-volt Milwaukee tools yet, but that's been a handy little devil. I really like it. Use it a lot. I always carry a pen light in my pocket when I'm in the garage. I've got one of these rechargeable ones, and it's a piece of junk. I mean, it works. I just have to charge it up. So like when I know I'm going to be out here working on, like say the Camaro, I'll plug that in so it's all charged up, so I have it available. You'll see that it rides around in the blue box. But the last thing is, and I'm going to give credit to Mortsky Repair on this, but he'll tell you that he found out from Watch West's work. But this is the Maxion Cyclops light, and it's got 3 different brightnesses. It flexes, it's rechargeable, it's got a magnet on it. You can screw it onto a tripod if you want to. I just got this not too long ago, and I'll tell you what, this is my go-to light, and I'm going to buy at least one more because it stays charged. Let's see, I'm still at 100%, and I've had this light, I haven't charged it since I bought it, and I've had it for 2 months. You know, it's off Amazon. That's where I got it from. So thanks to Mortsky for pointing it out to me. That's pretty much my collection of lights. I have a electric LED drop light over there that I very rarely use. I've had it around for a while. It was handy before all these cordless lights came out. So now you see what brightens my day. Dad joke. Not much on this table. A lot of handy stuff though. So this is a spark plug thread cleaning tool. Everybody should have one of these, because the gunk that gets in them threads on spark plugs on old engines and stuff, this is just super handy. It's even got the 18mm one for like really old spark plugs, but 14mm on this side. Go in, clean all the gunk out. Same way with these. These are just thread chasers, as opposed to using a tap and actually cutting threads. These are made to just clean out thread. On when I redid the motor for this Camaro, in that video you saw me using these just to clean up all the holes for like the exhaust, manifold bolts and stuff like that. This is a nut buster, not like your gym teacher was, you know, but this one you can put a nut on there, tighten this down, and it drives that wedge into the nut and breaks the nut off, so you can take it off the threads. There's nothing worse than breaking a fastener or stripping out a fastener and having to waste a ton of time because you don't have the right tool to take care of it. I learned that the hard way a long time ago. So I've got a lot of extractors and like left-handed drill bits, so that when you do break something, it doesn't shut you down for a long time. This is a pipe extractor. This is actually a tool that Dorman makes for taking out the heater nipple on the 350s. The Vortec 350s in the 90s had this metal heater nipple. The heater hose went into it. Instead of like screwing on to a nipple, it snapped into this stupid coupler that they put on the motor that had some O-rings in it, and that son of a gun would break off all the time. It was like a 1/2-inch pipe thread. So you drive this into that pipe thread so you can back the threads out of the intake and replace it with the same thing. Or like most smart people did, just put a pipe nipple in there and put a hose clamp on the hose so that you don't run into that problem again. But that's actually what that extractor is made for. It's made by Dorman. It works on all other size pipes. So these are all these ones right here are interior extractors. So like this is for 3/4 inch pipe. This one's for 1/2 inch pipe, 3/8, 1/4, and 1/8 inch pipe thread. You screw it in, threads run backwards. Hopefully it backs it out. So if you've ever broke off that little 1/8 inch pipe fitting that goes on the back of the intake on a small block Chevy, where your oil pressure line goes into right underneath the distributor, this is what you'd use to take that out of there. Most of the time that likes to break off right at the or below the intake level. So you either have to take the intake off to pull it out, or you have to figure out a way to pull it out, like a bunch of vice grips or crap like that. These are handy. They work good for that. These are made by Irwin. They're a 3/8 drive tap driver. So your taps will screw into that, and you can run taps with these. This will run the bigger taps. Those are handy. I've used them a lot. These are made by Milwaukee. I've never had to use these yet. I got them as a gift, and they're for taking off strip nuts. You can see they're fluted, and you just go over the top of the nut, and it works its way backwards when they're stripped out. Irwin has the same setup. I've had these for years. I've used them countless times, and this is a full set of them that goes all the way from a 1/4 inch up to 5/8, and that's as big as that one gets. And then yeah, 16 millimeter and 5/8. So that's what those do. You put them over the stripped out nuts, and you can run them off. A couple reamers, used them a few times. This is some cheesy little setup that will probably work great sometime. I think they're for taking out Phillips head screws. And just kind of putting all this stuff back in here as I go. So regular fluted extractors, I'm not a big fan of them because they like to do this. And when you break an extractor, your problems get worse. So this is a little cheap set that I might use on some small stuff. I like the drive-ins like these. You drill a hole, drive it in there, put a vice grips on there, start tapping it and backing it out. I've got them all the way up to, well, this will do a 13 or 1 3/8 bolt. So that's pretty good size. I don't think I've ever had to use that one. These are made by Wildy, and they're really good ones. These ones are made by KD Tools, and they're very good too. I've never broken these. I've broken these little spiral ones, but I've never broken these square ones when you have to drive them in. This set is a set of extractors that I've got. I don't think I've ever used them. They're made by Rensteig. They're made in Germany, so they're nice. I bought them at an auction, and you can put a wrench on them. That's the part I like, the head of the wrench. You know, you can just drive this down drill your hole into your fastener that broke, drive this down in there, and then back it out with the wrench on it. So those are kind of handy. Those are my extractors. Emergency kit, would that be a good name for it? So I keep them all. When you saw that in the toolbox tour, that was just like a drawer, and they were all kind of jammed in one corner there because it isn't one of them things that you use a lot. I just like to have them all in the same spot when I need them, so that when I go hunting for them, I'm not hunting all over. They're usually in exactly the same place all the time. One of them things that I don't move very much. I keep my thread chasers in with my taps and die set as I do the tap drivers, but everything else sits in my top drawer in a little compartment up there, and they've saved my butt several times. Next on the table, is that how we should do it? Like an auction. Next up on the block. So this is my Bluefield jump pack. Somebody wanted to see what that looked like. Buy these at hate chasing wiring gremlins, electrical gremlins, so I try and keep everything in one spot. I have a test light. I hate test lights because you don't know if you're getting full 12 volts, and I've gotten burned by test lights before thinking I had the voltage I needed there when I actually didn't. You try running a battery from the back of the car to the front of a car, and use a test light and still not getting any fire out of it, and then you get wise and you use a voltage meter, ohm meter, a digital one preferably. They still have the old sweep type, but a digital meter like that can tell you a lot of things about your vehicle that a test light can't. Now, this little deal, I showed you that before in the other tool tour. This is handy for finding 12 volts. It's not the ideal thing, but it will. I'll show you how it works here. Get on my battery. So put it on 12 volts. You're actually the ground for it. So when you're probing fuse boxes and stuff in the vehicle, it's very handy to have, because all you have to do is be holding on to the vehicle. You know, I mean, you're leaning against it usually, and if you get a weak buzz, it's just because, you know, if it isn't loud like it was there and clear, it's because you're not grounded right. But most of the time, all you gotta do is grab a hold of the door hinge while you're probing it, instead of trying to hook this clip to something, you know. So that's a handy little tool. They're cheap. They're like 15 bucks. I think ATD makes them. Got a variety of jumper wires in there. This is a homemade loser switch for remote start. You know, you put it down on the starter and bypass your switching stuff in there. Carry some paper and pen in here. A couple different crimpers, just because I have a whole bunch of crimpers. I got an extra set of leads for my DVOM. This is a 12 volt hookup, so you can use 12 volt stuff just right off the battery. I keep it in here just so I know where it's at. This is another one that came with my power probe. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This retractable test lead kit is pretty awesome. It's only 10 foot, but it's got, you know, your positive and your negative, plus it's got the green section. So if you want to, you know, need to run something else in that, and you don't have wires every place because it reels up. And you pull it out and get done with it. Reel it up like a fishing line. And it works slick. I use that a lot. So this is my power probe. This will do so many things. I wish I had one of these years ago. If you watched my video on replacing the window regulator in my Tahoe, you know, you can put 12 volts to stuff. You can check for voltage. You can fire up relays with it without having to have a bunch of jumper wires, because everything hooks in right there. All you need to do is be able to hook it into a battery with this extension, and you can basically probe any wires you want to, but you know, be able to put 12 volts to something and see if it's a bulb or if it's a connector, or, you know, what side of the, in my case with the window regulator, that was the connector wasn't connected right from the company, and they hadn't taken the coating off of the wire and hooked it in. You know, they just crimped it around the plastic in the connector, so it wasn't getting any voltage. And chasing electrical gremlins is aggravating. So this is my little electrical box. Sits in that Stanley toolbox right up above my regular toolbox. There's a spot for it, and that's probably one of my go-to things that I use the most, is to get when we start dealing with electrical problems and trying to figure out why things aren't working and stuff like that. This is the box we get out. Last thing we're going to go through is this blue box I was talking about, and this is kind of the box I work out of when I'm in the garage, because I know most of the stuff I need is going to be right in here. Phillips straight head screwdrivers. This stuff is always in this box. So this sits right on my cart, and this is what I work on the majority of the time. So this would probably be my favorite tools that are in here. Hey, my Milwaukee 3/8 ratchet, my Milwaukee bit driver. This little pocket protector's got a variety of different things in it. It's got magnets. It's got this punch that it's got small screwdrivers, markers, black marker, silver marker. There's that stupid flashlight I was talking about earlier that doesn't stay charged. This is an Irwin nut driver, and it's got like every size you'd need, you know what I mean? So when we're going someplace to work on something, you don't have to have 15 nut drivers with you when they're all right there. Magnet, always got magnets. I mean, I've always got telescoping magnets. They hang all over the garage. So much easier because everything always falls right out of reach. 8-inch pliers. Craftsman folding lock blade knife. Side cutters. Needle nose. Drill bit set. Up to 3/8. Hex bit set to cover all the hexes that go with the Milwaukee. This is one of the little plastic for taking weather strip and stuff off. It's always kind of handy to have one of them. Just a chisel. I don't know why that's floating around in there. A Lufkin's 16-foot tape measure. This is a Carlisle carbide scraper for scraping gasket material and stuff. It's just a small vice grip attached there. 5/16 and 1/4-inch nut drivers for hose clamps. This is a Wiss utility scissors, man, and you can cut steel with that. This little magnetic tray has some bit drivers in it, and universal joints, and universal a 1/2-inch and a 9/16 universal 10-inch extension. This is that 100-tooth Carlisle 3/8 ratchet. I love this thing. It's got the press in the middle to get rid of it. Left and right, 100 tooth, so it's a real fine tooth. Holds up really well. Hammer I've had for 25 years. This is my favorite 9/16 Thorson wrench. I don't know why, if it's just bent a little different, but boy, for doing transmission bolts on a turbo 350 from the top side, perfect. So you get where you're like, oh, I like that, I need that. This is a half 9/16 box end wrench. That's one of them wrenches when you're working on a small block Chevy, you can just carry in your pocket and cover 90% of the issues you deal with. So up to 3/4, 3/8 drive socket, up to 7/8 mid-range Carlisle sockets. This is the socket that I ended up using on that Tahoe when I couldn't get the torque converter bolt on. They are flank drive, so they drive on the flats, not on the points. 6-inch extension. This is a Milwaukee groove joint pliers. Gets out there pretty big. It's got some pry bars on the end of it. It's pretty handy. That's probably my favorite groove joint. This is a 7/16 3/8 bleeder screw wrench for doing bleeder screws on brake lines and calipers. Got a couple of 1/2 and a 9/16 deep. 1/2 9/16 5/8 flex head gear wrenches. These are the wrenches that aren't in the drawer. Everything else, I mean, I have to go get it if I need it, but the majority of the time you can cover a lot with that. This is a Mayhew weld whacker for like cutting welds and stuff. It's a Mayhew pry bar. This is a chisel I bought at an auction. That's solid steel. And that thing's awesome. Here's another little pry bar I use a lot. This is another chisel I use for cleaning things up. A paint pen. So wide scraper, that's not normally in there. This is a vice grip, a compounding vice grip. I've had that for years, and that's pretty handy. This is a step drill bit set. I just keep that right in here because I can actually run it with that driver there if I need to. I do have a full set of metric sockets that I keep on the other side there. There's a little bitty Stanley pry bar. Electrical tape, nuts and bolts. So this is kind of my traveling kit. I add to it if I know exactly what we're going to be tackling. You know, if we're going to take a part off of something or take something out of the trees and try and bring it back to life, like we're going to try and do with this mullet. You know, when we went and got this, even from our storage shed, we take this down with us just so that we're not running back and forth to get things. That's most of my go-to tools. I usually throw in a drilling hammer. So I'll show you what a drilling hammer is. It's just a solid steel hammer. This one's a 2.5 pound. This is probably my favorite hammer. Basically, when we're going to resurrect something or going to retrieve something, this is the toolkit we take along. Usually take a couple DeWalt impacts along. Tackle any project we can get our hands on. So that's not my list of favorite tools. It's just a list of tools that we find the handiest and the ones we go to the most. Like I said, there's wrenches and sockets and things like that that I'm real particular about. I mean, I have a specific screwdriver that just drives me nuts if I can't find it, and that one is this guy right here. You know, it's old. This is from Holland Auto Repair, which Wayne hasn't been in business for a long time, but I use this thing all the time for, you know, picking things up with the magnet and just like taking clips off and stuff like that. And I try and keep it in that holder so that I'm not chasing around looking for it. That flashlight that doesn't stay charged, I'll keep using that. I have several that run on batteries. I don't know why I don't bring them out and use them also. This little box, you can throw a lot of junk in it and throw it in the back of a vehicle and take off. Maybe this summer when you start looking at, we start talking about when we start doing road trips in the 68 and the 49 and maybe this guy, you know, I'll show you the tool rolls that each one of them vehicles have gotten it. I don't like to not have tools, so there's a tool roll in each one of them that can probably get us out of most predicaments. And then I have a toolbox that we call the possible box that's got a lot of small block Chevy stuff in it, gas filters, extra plug wires and stuff like that. So later on this summer, maybe we'll just do a quick tour of some of that stuff too, so you get an idea of, those of us that drive our shit, what we carry along so we can fix our shit, so we don't have to have someone help us fix our shit. With that in mind, thanks for following along, watching our channel. We're going to start working on this guy real soon. We're going to take the interior out of it first, kind of look at the floors, see what we got going on there. Maybe take a look at the front end. Transmission's going to have to come out, engine's going to have to come out. The engine for it is sitting there ready to go in. We'll probably have to go through that transmission or find something to replace it. It had a lot of water in it, so that would make me a little leery. But hey, thanks for following along. Like and subscribe below. We really appreciate you guys. We love feedback. Never forget, drive your shit. We'll see ya.